There was a Roman general who you may not have heard of named Belisarius who lived in the 500s AD. He conquered Italy and North Africa for the Emperor Justinian, who was seated in Constantinople. Historian Edward Gibbon writes, "At the head of 1,000 horse, the Roman general sallied from the Flaminian Gate to mark the ground of an advantageous position and to survey the camp of the barbarians. But while he still believed them on the other side of the Tiber River, he suddenly encompassed and assaulted by their innumerable squadrons. The fate of Italy depended on his life, and the deserters pointed to the conspicuous horse, a bay with a white face, which he rode on that memorable day. Aim at the bay horse was the universal cry. Every bow was bent, every javelin was directed against that fatal object, and the command was repeated and obeyed by thousands who were ignorant of its real motives. The bolder barbarians advanced to the more honorable combat of swords and spears, and the praise of an enemy has graced the fall of Vicandus the standard-bearer, who maintained his foremost station till he was pierced with 13 wounds, perhaps by the hand of Belisarius himself. The Roman general was strong, active, and dexterous. On every side he discharged his weighty and mortal strokes. His faithful guards imitated his valor and defended his person, and the Goths, after the loss of 1,000 men, fled before the arms of a hero. They were rashly pursued to their camp, and the Romans, oppressed by multitudes, made a gradual and at length a precipitate retreat to the gates of the city. The gates were shut against the fugitives, and the public terror was increased by the report that Belisarius was slain. His countenance was indeed disfigured by sweat, dust, and blood. His voice was hoarse, his strength was almost exhausted, but his unconquerable spirit still remained. He imparted that spirit to his desponding companions, and their last desperate charge was felt by the flying barbarians as if a new army, vigorous and entire, had been poured from the city. The Flaminian Gate was thrown open to a real triumph, but it was not before Belisarius had visited every post and provided for the public safety that he could persuaded by his wife and friends to taste the needful refreshments of food and sleep. In the more improved state of the art of war, a general is seldom required, or even permitted, to display the personal prowess of a soldier, and the example of Belisarius may be added to the rare examples of Henry IV, of Pyrrhus, and of Alexander. The Goths continued to lay siege to Rome where Belisarius was held, showing his skill in all areas of being a soldier. Edward Gibbon continues, "As soon as the enemy approached the ditch, Belisarius himself drew the first arrow, and such was his strength and dexterity that he transfixed the foremost of the barbarian leaders. A shout of applause and victory was re-echoed along the wall. He drew a second arrow, and the stroke was followed with the same success and the same acclamation. After maybe the greatest victory since Julius Caesar or Constantine, whenever he appeared in the streets and public places of Constantinople, Belisarius attracted and satisfied the eyes of the people. His lofty stature and majestic countenance fulfilled their expectations of a hero. The meanest of his fellow citizens were emboldened by his gentle and gracious demeanor. Belisarius had Goths and other tribes only wanting to be ruled under him, and not the Emperor Justinian at the time. His gains and successes were short-lived, as Justinian kept him at arm's length, as Belisarius broke one of the 48 laws of power, which is never outshine the master. The Roman Empire at the time was also not capable of maintaining its power over its previously held territories. So Belisarius is largely forgotten today. His sacrifices largely didn't amount to much. He did show that at any time in history, being strong, capable, brave, will lead to people following you and making great things possible. There were just so few of these leaders at this time maintaining what was impossible.